Coffee stain badge on a lanyard string. Hotel ballroom, buzzing, fluorescent wings. Name tags, crooked inside jokes. We live on acronyms and conference notes. Late night panels, early flights, still swapping war stories under dim lights. If the world goes sideways, who they gonna call? The weirdo taking roll in the expo hall. I am talks tonight. Yeah, we laugh so we don't lose our minds. Blue skies days to the worst headline. We're the ones still on the run. I am talks tonight.
All right, that was the wrong intro. But just give a little advertisement. I am, which I'm going to be the incoming president in November. We have a podcast. So maybe that was a introduction for the podcast for IAM. But that being said, let's try doing the right introduction.
Welcome to the EMN podcast, where philosophy meets disaster and uncomfortable truths meet the profession we call emergency management. This is not safe space thinking. This is the arena. Let's begin.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. This is Todd DeVoe here with the right introduction to our show. But like you can still hear, I'm flying solo today, and sometimes that happens. Andrew was covering for me while I was doing some traveling, and Andrew today is out, and Dan is still out. We're waiting for his triumphant return. So, yeah, what are we talking about today? You know, when we think about looking at the media today, looking at just the world in general, it feels like it's falling apart, right? We have political disruptions here in the United States. We got stuff going around across the world. We got war, but the world isn't falling apart. I truly believe that it is definitely revealing what it truly is. And there hasn't been a time in history where we've had complete peace. What I mean by this is that there's always turmoil, there's always change, there's always churn. And the only difference is today is, it doesn't take 3 months to get information. We are in the information age. We have social media at our fingertips. This podcast is a good example, excuse me, of what that means. And so in conversations at work, it feels like everything is unstable, or like always one step away from something breaking that we can't fix, right? So it's not collapse. It's not even truly chaos for the sake of chaos, but it's truly exposing our systems that are maybe not working. Our systems, the political systems, the environmental systems, technological systems, social systems, they're being stressed in ways they haven't been stressed in a long time. And under that pressure, they are showing us what they truly are. And it can be uncomfortable at times. And because a long time we've operated in a belief that if we plan enough, if we write enough documents, if we, do enough speeches, if we check enough boxes, that the community is ready. And what does ready really mean? And you've seen some of the stuff that I've written in the past. Kyle King, for instance, has written a lot about this as well. It's capacity and capability. And sometimes capability only shows up under stress. And so we always talk about the idea that you do not rise to the occasion, right? We don't rise to the occasion. We fall to our level of training. And that's important to really digest and understand what does that mean. But systems can't be trained. So when systems fail, what does that exactly kind of get into? And the structures that we rely upon right now are government systems, infrastructure, supply chains, and if they're operating under this artificial stability, and that stability is gone, this is kind of what we're seeing today, right? Climate events are outpacing the the planning cycles, right? We know that storms are getting, well, in some cases getting stronger, but then they come back on the other side and they get weaker, all right? We have fire season is no longer a thing in the West. In the West, it's really year-round fire threat. With fuels that are drier, more abundant, and also the other side of it too are people are encroaching in that urban or in the suburban areas, are encroaching into the wildland areas, and so we have the WUI is becoming a bigger threat, right? People are moving into the areas that we didn't have to worry about before, so that's another part of the stress at the systems. And then when we look at political polarization, that's been that way for a long time. And we're having this discussion regarding the elections and some of the unsavory words that are being used, I guess, for lack of a better term. And Thomas Jefferson actually was calling atoms hermaphrodite back in back in the 1800s. So the political rhetoric has always been kind of odd and name calling and that kind of stuff. So that's not new. We're just again hearing about it quicker and faster because technology is moving faster than public can keep up, and the policy can't keep up. So a good example is the use of AI tools at work. Things are going like this now. On things that just take us a long time to create, we're able to create almost instantaneously, and that is a disruptor. So we're seeing all these disruptors that are happening kind of convergently at the same time here, and none of them are really isolated. It's like an onion; they're more layered, right? And they're also interacting with each other. So when we were having issues and supply chain issues, they're instantaneously felt. Whether because we can't get enough of chips, computer chips, for instance, and then all of a sudden the price of automobiles in the United States has skyrocketed, right? There's a great piece about the cost of an automobile in Reason Magazine and why this is occurring, and you should go read it. And again, that's another stressor on us as individuals, but also us as emergency managers, because that means like supply chain issues are impacting our residents and our constituents, right? And so each of these problems are amplifying each other. This is what complexity really looks like. It isn't a single incident. It's a convergence of these stressors that expose the system. And that's where I think we're gotten this wrong in emergency management, because we spend a lot of time preparing for incidents. We do. We prepare for things that may or may not occur. Fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, earthquakes, right? Which is, we need to. But we're not necessarily preparing for systems under stress. And that's the difference. As the incidents begin, they have a middle and they have an end. But a stress system, it just keeps revealing itself. And when that happens, the illusion of control starts to fall apart, right? And that's the part that emergency managers truly struggle with. We like control. We like the idea that if we just do the right things, if we have the right plan in place, if we have the right procedure in place, if we have the right document that we can reference, that things are going to be okay. We can try to manage the consequences that occur. We can try to manage the outcomes of those consequences, and we can restart the recovery process. But in reality, we are not controlling the system. We are participants in it. So, when there's a shift, we have to shift with it. And this is where emergency management leadership really matters. Not management, not coordination, but leadership. Because leadership allows people to operate in uncertainty without freezing. It allows teams to adapt when the planning no longer fits the reality. And so let's be honest, we're seeing more and more situations where the planning, well, it doesn't truly fit. So the question becomes, what do we do with that? Do we double down on the solution and say, hey, let's write more plans? Let's have deeper meetings. Let's get together and see, like, why this EOP doesn't work anymore. We're going to run more exercises and to convince ourselves that we just need to refine this one thing, this one spot, just a little bit more. Or do we acknowledge what is truly being revealed? Maybe the system isn't as resilient as we thought it was. Maybe preparedness isn't about having the right piece of gear or the right document written, but it's really building capacity and being able to run the right capability. The capability to adapt, the capability to make decisions in ambiguity. I always say we're lucky if we have 50% of the information coming in where we can make a decision, but maybe we need to start thinking about, maybe we're lucky if we have 20% of the information coming in and to be able to make a decision and be able to incrementally change the direction of where we're going so we can head this way. It's like, I go back to the Navy times here. It's like, driving the ship, right? You got to continuously kind of correct that course so you're staying on course as the waves knock you around, right? And you have to try to get to that direction you're going to, because if you're off by a degree, you can really miss your mark, right? So you have to continuously course correct. That's really we have to be, right, in this concept, right? We have to be able to lead when there isn't that clear answer. We have to be able to course correct so we can go to the North Star. That's uncomfortable work. It's uncomfortable when you don't have the answers. It's uncomfortable when you're being pressured to have the answers and you don't have them. Maybe it's not realistic anymore that we think that we can plan our way out of things. It is truly about navigating the disruption. And there's a philosophical piece to this too. It's the idea that stress reveals truth isn't new. The Stoics talked about it, right? Marcus Aurelius wrote about how obstacles don't block the path. They are the path. I wrote a piece about this a bit ago, and I use the idea of the river. And when a river comes to a rock, it doesn't necessarily stop. It learns to figure out how to get around the rock or over the rock, right? The boulder that falls off the side of the cliff. And it actually ends up smoothing that boulder, right? And really making it to where it's part of the river again. In other words, we are trying to avoid is actually the thing that shows us who we are. And it applies here. We're seeing this globally. We're seeing emergency management, disaster management, crisis management, whatever you want to use, depending on where you're at. But we're not just managing crisis here. What we're looking for is clarity. We need clarity about where we are strong. We need clarity and understanding where we're fragile. And clarity is all that matters right now. So maybe the question isn't how do we stop this? Maybe the question is, what is this showing us? Are we willing to pay attention to the signals that are being sent to us? We have to figure out what the signals are through the noise. In this moment, as chaotic as it feels, it might actually be one of the most important learning opportunities that we've had in a long time. Not just as emergency managers, but as leaders. So I don't think that the world is falling apart. I do think it's revealing itself. And the real question is, where are we going with what we see? Now, I know this has been a short one. Normally we take a half an hour through this process, and I'm just knocking this one out. Basically because, I don't have my partner here to have a good conversation. But in fact, Andrew popped in right here, and Andrew says, we need to look at the limits of our capabilities where we can shift that to other agencies and partners to make sure that we collectively understand the roles and responsibilities. Absolutely, Andrew, I agree with this. And he says, I wish I could be there waiting for the doc. Yep, Andrew, I wish you were here too. So As Andrew says, we ride the wave, not fighting the water, but understanding the flow. And I think that's the most important part here is understanding what the flow is, understanding how we can be better at what we do, how we can be better at understanding the signals that are coming in and filtering out the noise. And that helps with understanding the chaos. But everybody, until then, I have nothing else for us today. Next week we'll be talking a little bit more about this and some other things with Andrew, and hopefully Dan gets back on board here. And I'm excited about where we're going. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend, and hope to see you guys next Monday.